All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Board. I am your host, DeVaughn Croxton. I'm the Director of Programs for US Chess. And today I have a very special guest with me, Mr. Tony Ballard, a man who has overcome a lot of adversity, who has gone through transformations within his life, and has found the passion of chess. And through his work with chess, now uses it to mentor and help those that he comes across through his organization. And so we're going to get to know Tony a little bit more in this interview. And once again, Tony, thank you for joining with us today.
Thank you, Devon. I appreciate you for having me, man. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump right in. I know the audience is going to be very excited to learn about you and learn more about your story. So my first question for you, Tony, is can you tell the audience where you're from and what the chess scene was like where you were growing up?
All right. So I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I was born there, raised there until about the age of 13, 14 years old when we moved from Tulsa, Oklahoma to a more calm, nonviolent town called Hutchinson, Kansas. And it was a nice little town, and it was a lot less crime, a lot less drugs. And so, but before we moved to Hutchinson, I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, North Side, and it was drug infested, gang infested neighborhood. And me, my mom, and my brother, we was homeless a lot and living in different neighborhoods where it was, gang infested or, like I said, drug infested. But chess wasn't in those neighborhoods. Chess wasn't found. It happened to be when I was actually in one of those homeless shelters. Actually, it was a battered women's shelter where I found the game of chess and fell in love with it. And that was around the age of 11 years old.
Got it. Wonderful, wonderful. That is truly remarkable. I mean, to even go through those things at that age and to discover chess at a young age. And I think I was about 11 or 12 when I discovered chess too. And it's just amazing how that game can hold on to you and intrigue you, even at a young age. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was just like, chess was a way for me to escape my current environment. It gave me an outlet. How it happened was at the battered women's shelter, the staff would take us kids aside to engage us in an activity to basically help us cope or to deal with what we was faced with our parents, either running from a spouse who was beating them or running from, drugs or homelessness. And so they would use different games. It just so happened to be this one day they pulled out the game of chess, and man, I was intrigued by it. And I found a way of escape through the game of chess from my reality.
Wonderful, wonderful. And 1 second here. Yep. So let's dive into that word escape for a moment, kind of paint a little bit more of that picture for our audience, right? Because you're at this shelter, you're at a very young age, and I'm sure there's a lot of different circumstances and factors that led you to that point. And if you could also paint what you remember about that moment of learning, was it just kind of an automatic love? Was it a little combative? Were you kind of dismissive about it? Just kind of paint that picture for us.
Yeah, so I will admit that I was a quiet kid, but I was very mischievous and, very devious kid, And so when the game of chess came about, I was also a very insecure kid due to some childhood trauma that I have, endured. And so when they pulled out the game and they was teaching the kids, I was one of those kids in the background, intently watching, but not letting them know that I didn't know what was going on because I didn't want no one to know that I didn't know. And so I was just observing and learning as quickly and as fast as I could so that I could get involved and become the star of the show and get some attention. And that's what I strive for the most, was that attention. And so it was a game that, for me, provided an escape because it absorbed so much of my thinking. It absorbed so much of my time and my focus that I didn't even know that I was in a battered women's shelter. I didn't know that my mom had just been beat up. Her face had been bruised and beaten because I'm studying the board. I'm watching what's going on there so intently and so immersed in the game. and that would go on for hours, and so that's why I found an escape in the game of chess.
Wonderful, wonderful. And honestly, as a chess player myself, I can relate to that. Those moments of when you're deep in the game, it's almost like your surroundings kind of disappear and they don't matter
Yeah,
as much because
facts.
you're
Yeah,
thinking about, okay, my move, my decision, like your life kind of shrinks into the board, if that makes sense.
facts.
Like this is
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, man. You're looking straight down at the board, and I know we didn't get there yet, but it would go on and carry into other areas of my life later
Of
when I
course.
was in prison.
Of course, of course. And no, that's actually a perfect segue because my next question for you is related to that topic. And I was going to say, your story mentions learning chess or using chess. It was a part of your life while you were incarcerated. And so, how did the game change the way that you viewed your circumstances while you were in that situation?
So chess, like I said, became a way of escape for me everywhere where I was in dealing with jail, incarceration. When I was in jail in the county, I would play chess with another person who knew how to play for hours on end. If there was no one in the county jail who knew how to play, I would teach him so that I would have someone to play chess with, and it would keep my mind off of what I was going through at that time. Like I said, just focusing on the chessboard, on our moves. We played night from sun up to sundown, and before long, it was time to lock down and go to sleep and start a new day. And it just happened to be that it was my way of escape in prison too. I'm sitting there playing chess hours on end, but I wasn't putting the two and twos together, meaning that all the skills that I was acquiring from the game of chess that later I would come to understand I can use in my own life for rehabilitation, for growth, for success. And I didn't find that out until, I was serving long-term segregation as a result of violent behavior, bad behavior. And long-term segregation is 23 hours a day in the cell, and I only got 1 hour out. But you had a lot of time to think, man. And so when I was down there and in between games, I was so obsessed with winning and so obsessed with learning the game of chess that I began to see that there are some skills that are in the game of chess that if I just grab them and use them in my life, I think I'll have success. And so I became a guinea pig in my own experience, and I started using those skills, the time management skills, those critical thinking skills, problem solving skills to, and goal setting skills and strategic skills to elevate myself right there from long term segregation into general population, and then eventually to my release from prison.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I think what stands out so much about what you just shared is that chess naturally was healing for you,
Yeah,
almost like subconsciously, right? And then at some point,
yeah,
you're like, wait a minute, I can use these skills. I'm learning things that are actually transformative for myself and then sharing it with others. And so, you're teaching other people originally almost from a selfish lens, right? Because you just need someone to play a game with. But then you start to think even beyond that. Like, hold on, if this could be
yeah.
healing for me, this might be healing for other people as well.
Exactly. And that's exactly how it happened. You explained it very well. Once I realized how, much of a blessing the game of chess was to me in my growth, that's when I began to use chess as an analogy in all of my conversations with people that I was mentoring in prison. I was telling them, man, we got to think before we act. Every move got to be our best move because the odds are stacked against us already.
Yeah.
And so in my conversations, in my mentoring sessions, I would always use the game of chess, such as the word sacrifice. We all know what sacrifice means in chess, but I'd say, hey guys, what is it that you have to sacrifice? What is it that you have to give up that you feel is important to you right now in order to gain ground and get a better position in your life? And for the most part, that was, your ego. You have to sacrifice your ego. You have to be humble, and you have to sacrifice, a lot of different things that kept us from being a better version of ourselves. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that, transitions, into this next question I have, which was, I came across you mentioning that chess saved your life. And if you could
Yes.
elaborate that on a deeper level, because I think well, I already know that people know the positive impacts of chess, but for it to change a person's life or save a person's life, that's such a powerful statement to make. And so I wanted to give you space to share more about that.
Yeah, chess saved my life. Chess changed my life because it taught me how to think. You know, it's crazy because I always had the tools. I always was a thinker. I always was academically inclined in school and did well, but I just did not know how to think on a practical level amongst my peers in society or when dealing with a problem or situation. And so chess really just elevated my confidence to believe that, hey, if I just slow down and I just think my way through this problem, I can come up with some really good solutions that are better than the alternative, you know? And so it was the game of chess that enlightened me on that topic. Hey, think before you act, you know, contemplate your moves, meditate on your moves. And so I started using that same concept in my life and setting goals, being strategic. I would write down my goals in my journal. And months later, years later, I look back and I see that I've accomplished those goals, but it all derived from the game of chess. When you write down your goals or you analyze your games, and then you go back and you look at it, you see the mistakes that you made. So that's where journaling came in for me, you know, was the game of chess. You journaled your game of chess, you went back and you saw where you went wrong at. So it really did save my life because it gave me the confidence, DeVaughn, that I can think, I can use my head in this world and in this life to get out of situation. Because before then, I was impulsive. I did not think before I act. I just moved on how I felt. And early on, when I played chess, that's how I did. I used a little bit of my skills and knowledge of the game, but primarily when I made a move, it was based on how I felt, you know, not what was, you know, logically sound.
Wonderful, wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing that, and really just bringing home that analogy as well about what chess kind of in a principled manner forces you to do, right? Because you can't analyze and see where you made your mistakes if you don't write those moves down, right? In the same way that you reference journaling, if you're not writing down these steps or these ideas or these decisions that you plan to make, and you won't be able to go back and reference those things and to see where did I make mistakes, where do I need to make
Yeah,
an adjustment, do I need to pivot here, things of that nature. And so I really applaud you for making that connection as well.
thank
So
you.
yeah, and so going into my next question for you, Tony, many people view prison as a place of confinement, yet for you, in my opinion, it became a place of awakening. And can you talk more about that transformation and that transition? Because a lot of people can get into the mode of prison being a completely negative thing, but I think for you, there are some positive aspects in there.
Right. Yeah. So initially, when I went to prison, Devon, I was thinking like I'm in prison. I got to do the prison things. You know, like you're in prison, you got to do the prison things. This is where you are. And so, you know, I wanted to get tattoos on my face. I wanted to rep the gang. I wanted to get involved in drug trafficking, all the manipulating schemes and the things that, you know, are typical of a prison inmate. But it wasn't until I read a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People where I had a paradigm shift. In that book, it talked about a paradigm shift where you begin to look at your situation differently. And as a result of looking at it differently, you get a different outcome. So for me, rather than looking at my situation of being locked up in prison, being punishment, and doing the prison things, which were all negative, I looked at my prison incarceration as an opportunity for me to go to a school of hard knocks and learn some life lessons so that when I come out of here, I can be a better man. And so I began to turn my cell into a laboratory where I dissected my own self, my own behaviors internally from the inside out. I went to the root, I went to the core of what was tripping me up, those traumatic issues that happened to me as a child. You know, that all that time alone in that cell, I began to meditate on my behavior. What made me do this? What made me do that? And I continue to ask myself, why? Well, why did I do that? And so the more and more I did that and came to a better understanding of myself, that's when I started realizing that there's potential for growth here, change, and transformation. And so, yeah, a
Wonderful.
lot of people in prison, man, they look at prison like I'm locked up. I got to be in the gang. I got to sell drugs, do drugs, stab people, whatever. But you have to look at your situation as an opportunity for growth. And so now my outlook on life when it comes to any adversity or any difficulty is that there is some gold, there is some jewels that can come out of that situation.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I have to take a moment and honestly applaud you for even getting to that point because it's already difficult enough for people to accept that they need help, they need some form of rehabilitation, right?
Yeah,
But for you to not only make that acceptance, but to find it within yourself and we know without external support or extra resources, right? Because just the average day person, they are combative when it comes to therapy, when it comes to positive mental health sometimes. And for you, you're like, hey, if I want my situation to change, I have to be the catalyst in that change. And
yes,
looking within yourself, even in a negative environment, to say, no, I could still come out of this as a
right.
positive person.
Yeah. And I was bound and determined not to allow the prison environments to shape or mold me into what was happening to everybody around me. You know, I've seen some really good, kids that come from some really good environments just made a mistake.
Yeah.
They had both parents in the household, middle class income, all the support in the world. They made a mistake, came to prison, and then once they got in prison, they got grouped in with all the guys who just felt like, okay, I'm here, I just got to do the prison thing, and they changed completely.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to do that, man. And so, you talked about any external resources. The only external resources I had was books, again, I go back to the game of chess. When I was in the hole and I was playing chess and I was losing, I was checking out books from the library that would help improve my game, but I wouldn't let my opponents know that. All they knew was, dang, he's getting better.
Yep.
And so it was then I realized that, okay, if these books can help improve my game of chess, what other books can help improve my life?
Wonderful.
And so I dropped reading all those books like John Grisham, Stephen King, Dean Koontz. I stopped reading those books and I started reading self-help books.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then that leads into, I mean, you pretty much addressed it, but that leads right into the topic of the intersection of the spiritual and personal transformation and your chess growth, right? That intersection was, you just described it so perfectly. Like, okay, I don't want to lose and I want to be better at chess because chess is helping me pass time and it's also positive for me. So I'm going to read these chess books. But through that discovery of your growing in your chess game, you're like, wait a minute, chess is so connected to my thinking. There has
Yes.
to be other information out there. There has to be other books out there
Come on,
that are going to
man.
help me be a better person. So
Preach. Preach. That's right.
wonderful, wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful intersection there. So you touched on it a little bit, but I think this is a very fascinating moment to bring up this question is in what ways did chess offer a sense of community or connection while you were inside, and how important was that to your development? And just to frame this question, leading up into this, it's a lot of internal reflection, self-development, right? You're kind of going into your own bubble to grow, or your own cocoon, should I say. And now you're like maybe considering approaching this and interacting with other people. Talk more about that community building.
So first off, like I said, when I got into prison, I was in a bunch of bull crap. I'm from a former gang, and those gang members that I embraced, they embraced me. That was my community. All the Crips, that was my community. We fed off one another's negativity, and so that was my community. When I decided to change my life, my community came from a whole lot of people to just myself. And then it was myself and my chessboard. And so me playing the game of chess, me reading my self-help books, I start elevating, start becoming a better person. I'm still working on my anger management skills, my temper. I'm still working on a lot of personal issues. But slowly and surely, I start seeing new people come to prison. And in prison, everybody watches everybody. They're trying to see what type of time they on. They're trying to see what they doing, what they about, because people are skeptical about getting involved in different relationships because they don't want to get in trouble. It was then when people saw that I was just playing chess, I kept positive mindset. I was respectful to staff, I was respectful to others. That finally people start coming alongside me and they say, "Hey man, what's this game of chess? Can you teach me something? Can we play a game?" And so, all right, and so playing the game of chess, man, I started developing a chess community, and it set the tone, DeVaughn. It set the tone for like, this is what time I'm on. I'm not on no bull crap. I'm not on no negativity. So it let them know out the gate they couldn't bring that my way. If they wanted to talk to me, hang out with me, build a community with me, it would be based around thinking. It would be based around positive choices. It would be based around respect, which is the game of chess. Good choices, decision making, thinking, respect. And so that's how I built my community. And for long, I had, just droves of people wanting to learn chess. I come out in the day room. I had a few extra chessboards. I set them up on the tables. People will be playing. There'll be a dispute. I get up, I go over and explain, hey, well, you technically touched your rook first, so that means you have to move your rook. You can't castle. And so I would settle a lot of beefs like that, or no, you can't do that. You can't castle through check. You know what I'm saying? So by proxy like that, I became like a tournament director of sorts inside the prison. And that's how I built my community of chess followers, man.
That is so wonderful. And then the organic aspect of everything you just said is what's so powerful to me, because like I said, we talk about this cocoon moment of you transforming, right? You become a better person, you interact with other people, but then a lot of times it's not even you finding people, it's people finding you just because of your light, right? Because of you being a more positive person, they're gravitating to you because although you're in a negative environment, you're trying to find more positive outcomes. And from a
Right.
distance, if I could see Tony is, he's carrying himself in a positive manner, he has this type of character, I naturally want to gravitate to him. And because of you being this type of person, now your world starts to expand. It's not just you within the game culture or now within your community of Crips, but now it's like the chess transcends all of these different things. All of these different backgrounds kind of become null and void when it comes to the
Yeah.
chessboard.
Right. Yeah. And it's crazy because a lot of those people low key, they wanted a safe space.
Exactly.
And so a lot of those guys, like you said, they was bloods, they was GDs, they was Sir Thresses, they was whatever, but they wanted a way out. And so coming over to this community of chess, where we played chess, we were positive, we hung out with each other, and it created an environment where they can get away from all that, man. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? Without, officially saying, hey, I'm done with the game.
Yep.
They can just easily gravitate away from that. And people saw that. It was just such a blessing, man. It really was.
That is a blessing. You brought up something so important when it comes to gang culture in general, right? And so a big part of my job is positively impacting at-risk youth through the game of chess, right? And what you just broke down is that these people coming from, arguably combating sides, right? Like, different opposing gangs, were able to put those differences aside and meet on a medium and neutral ground, which is the chessboard. Because you mentioned like trying to get out of those different situations, right? Like getting out of those different gangs. Usually, from my research, from educational psychology, that's not always a very clean break, if that makes sense, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
A lot of that is, you're not getting out because we say so. Once
yep,
you're in it for life. And now you're opening an avenue that wasn't normally presented to them. So I think that's very powerful.
yeah, yeah. Man, it's crazy because you talk about that not having a clean break. There was one Latino guy who was a part of, I want to say, the Sutreses or whatever, but he wanted to get out, and so he was hanging out with us, and more and more he hung out with us rather than his partners. And man, it was a tragic story how, they slashed him on his face. I guess that's a part of, what you get when you get out. You get one of those cuts across your face that you'll wear for the rest of your life, man. And that's what happened, man. So,
Got it. Thank you for sharing that. And so, um, now, so we have all these things going on, day to day. You're being a positive light. You're building community. Talk to me how that evolves into your interactions with the Gift of Chess, your organization, and tell more to the audience about what that organization is all about.
okay, give me a quick minute.
Yeah, sure, not a problem. While we wait for Tony to come back, everyone, I just want to thank you once again for joining. Um, this platform Beyond the Board is used as a way to show the positive impacts of chess, even beyond just the game and the competitive aspect, but how it can really be transformative to all of our different communities. And I hope that these types of episodes and this content inspires you all to use chess within your own communities to be an agent of change. And yeah, so yeah, welcome back, Tony. And if you wanted to just talk
Thank you.
more about the Gift of Chess organization.
Yeah. Yeah, so as I'm doing all these things in prison, I'm building my chess clubs, I'm building, a bunch of chess players, loving the game of chess. It's very competitive. I'm mentoring people on the side through the game of chess because they respect me, they respect my thinking and just everything about me. So I'll go to Wichita Work Release. Now, Wichita Work Release is a facility where you're 1 foot in and you're 1 foot out. We like to say that there because half of the day you spend in society working a job, the other half of the day you live at the facility. And so while I was there, you also get a cell phone where that's a whole lot different than in prison, where you call on prison phones,
Yeah.
prepaid, recorded, collect calls. So my brother got on the phone. He lives in New York City. He said, "Hey Tony, man, what are some of your hobbies you love to do?" I said, "Chess, of course, without a doubt." He said, "Well, I got somebody who plays chess who's pretty good, and you ought to play him." And he introduced me to Russell McCoskey. So me and Russell, we start talking on the phone, man, and we before long we playing chess over the phone the same way that I used to play chess when I was in the hole or segregation. I would yell out a number, pawn 29, because the boards was numbered 1 to 64.
Yeah.
Pawn to 29, and then he'd yell out, well, pawn to 37. And and so that's how we were playing the hole. But on the phone, me and Russell would just call out, knight F2 or, and so bishop, B6, whatever. And so as we were playing, we got to know one another. We start sharing ideas, and that's when the prison outreach portion of the Gift of Chess was created. Now, the Gift of Chess was already a global operation, meaning that they had said that they wanted to give out 1 million chess sets to different, people throughout the world. And so that's been the goal, and that's an ongoing thing. They want to give out 1 million chess sets. And so as a part of that, they said, how about you starting the prison outreach portion here at the Gift of Chess, where you use chess as a cognitive rehabilitation tool. You can use your lived experience. You can talk to them about, how chess has helped you, how chess has been a blessing in your life, and how it can be the same in theirs. And also, I was highlighting the different skills that come from the game of chess, and then showing practical application on the chessboard of those different skills, like problem solving or patience or time management skills. And then I was also using those same skills as a practical application in their personal lives, problem solving, whether it be a relationship, whether it be on the job, whether it be, a math problem. You still have to do the same 3 steps, such as, analyze the situation, think about solutions, take action, as the same as you would on the chessboard when you're solving a problem. And so that's how the Gift of Chess was born. We end up reaching over 202 different correctional facilities nationwide, servicing over 1 million inmates. through a platform called Edovo, where I uploaded this content, and then residents of correctional facilities can see it. And then right here in Kansas Department of Correction, I was able to tour all 18 correctional facilities, implement chess, give them a free chess set. They were able to become United States Chess Federation members as a part of the partnership that USCF has with the Gift of Chess, where we hold official chess tournaments. Then we send over our tournament report, and now they're official chess members. They can leave prison, come out in society, show them that they are USCF certified, get involved in chess activities here in community. So it's a process where they learn chess in prison, they become a part of the United States Chess Federation, they're members, and then they participate in our chess tournaments that are officially rated. And then when they're released, they can carry that on in the community, get a part of a chess club, chess association, and then, become, active, productive, members in society. So thanks to USCF, man, for helping us to expand the initiative. We've been able to do this in Kansas, as well as Minnesota Department of Corrections, and we're looking forward to do it in other states as well.
Wonderful, wonderful, and you're very welcome. This aligns, directly with our mission and directly with my job and my goal as director of programs to reach these communities and make chess more feasible and accessible. And I love what you brought up, because that was definitely the vision. Was that through having a rating, even while you are a resident of these correctional facilities, you have something to work towards, but something that you're building upon that you can also continue to focus on as you transition back into society. And knowing that chess provides a lot of positive outcomes and positive environments, there's a direct correlation there, right? If you're interested in chess and you stick with it, the goal and the vision is that when you are eventually released, then you stay within that, and keeps you from, reverting back to negative behaviors. So very glad to hear about the impact.
The great thing about that partnership, DeVaughn, is that when they became USCF members, they're officially rated games. Now they're bragging, and they're just bragging rights. You got people who, hey, I'm a 1500. What are you? And so again, this was our third year, and so in year 3, you got guys, really competing for that top spot in the state, meaning in the Kansas Department of Corrections. And so we got guys that saying, hey, I'm number 2 in the state with a rating of, 1640 or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So that really helped, build that competitive fire through chess with their partnership. So, and then of course we're able to track the ratings. We can look at a person who's just started in year 1 versus now in year 3, their rating have increased, they've improved, they're winning tournaments. And so it's just really cool to see their progress.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And so now that you're kind of, it's kind of a full circle moment, right? Like now you're the person introducing chess to other people and using it to be transformative for them. Could you tell me more about, more or less on average, how it was received when you were first introducing chess, especially to younger people? What were those responses, especially those that are coming from like tough circumstances?
They're always intrigued. Chess, hands down, is a very welcoming game. It transitions across all boards, all nations, nationalities, creeds, man, and colors, and the boundary lines, man. And so I've never had any resistance when it came to the game of chess in any way, whether it be, starting a new program, trying to teach somebody the game of chess. If I would say I had any resistance, that some people find that it's a little bit more complicated to learn, and so they don't, get as involved as they want. But those who do have that interest in the game, they get what's called a chess bite, and they become obsessed with the game. They love it. They dream about it. They think about it day and night, and so there's friendships born over the game of chess, because you're spending hours over the board from your opponent. And when you're spending that amount of time over, you build that familiarity with one another. And so now you're familiar with, and in prison that works because you can be neighbors with someone in the cell right next to you. And I've done this and won't talk to them for years, because in prison it's an antisocial environment. You don't do no talking. Now we got chess in the prisons, man, where it breeds a socially inclusive environment. And so now people are talking to get to know one another, and they're more likely to squash a beef or a conflict because they're familiar with that person now. Oh, I know DeVaughn. We played chess, man. Let me talk to him. I can talk. I feel that comfortable where I can talk to him now. And without chess breeding that socially inclusive environment, that wouldn't have been possible. You know.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And that's another aspect that didn't even realize was that it's opening these social doors. We're
Yeah.
thinking about it from the rehabilitation standpoint, but just making it a more social thing. Because, like you said, prisons can feel very antisocial just by nature and by design. And so that kind of transitions me into another question I'm going to ask you here. If you had the ear of local officials or school administrators or different people who can impact policies, what would you say to them to convince them that chess is more than just a game?
Man, I'm super passionate about this. I'm glad you asked that question. I got goosebumps just thinking about it because DeVaughn, they'll spend freaking thousands and millions of dollars on shackles and chains and barbed wire fences and mace and tasers and handcuffs. They don't want to spend $5 on a chessboard to help rehabilitate an inmate, man. That's all it costs. It's $5 for a chess set for two people to begin to develop thinking skills and thinking habits that all they need is a split second to think about a choice or a decision before they make it. That's what's happening in the world. These kids aren't thinking. They're making these impulsive decisions that cost them the rest of their life. And I get upset about that. I get really
Yeah.
angry about it. Be honest, I'm pissed off. Because I just seen them spend like $10,000 on a scanner where you come through and they want to make sure but they cry and moan about $100 for 50 chess sets. You know what I'm saying? And for me, 50 chess sets is 100 inmates that can possibly be rehabilitated, because now you're creating an environment to where you're saying, okay, let's put on our thinking hats. Let's start thinking about our actions before and the consequences of our actions. And that's a low cost catalyst for change, man. It don't take much. They're having fun. They're staying out of trouble. But policymakers, people who are in positions of power and influence, let's get chess as a cognitive rehabilitation tools in prisons and jails nationwide, where we're creating chess clubs and we're creating these environments of academic environments. Rather than, these guys go to prison. When they come out, they want to be big and strong. They want to be the hardest gang member in their neighborhood. No, when you go to prison, the thought should be, I'm going to come out of here better. I'm going to come out of here as a college graduate. I'm going to come out of here with a trade, whether it be an HVAC or welding or something, but because I used my head. And now I'm going to go back to my community and I'm going to make change there. And so for me, I ask the people who are in positions of power and making change and policy change, let's look at chess as a low-cost catalyst for change, as a cognitive rehabilitation tool, and begin to use it as a program in prisons and jails nationwide and help us with the funding to do that.
Wonderful. Well said, Tony. Well said, and I just have to commend you again for, saying that so eloquently, and the fact that you brought up 100 boards, changing 100 people, but cycles of hundreds of people, right? Because you work on
Ripple
this
effects.
100, they spread that, you bring in another 100, and then so now, like you said, low cost but high impact, very high impact. You
Yeah.
transformed, a key group of people, especially those that are already viewed as leaders. Changing one person is really
Yes.
changing 20 or 25 or
That's
50.
that's facts, man. Because you say I was a leader, man.
Yeah.
In prison, I was what they would call a shot caller. You know what I'm saying? I was a leader of the Hoover Crips. What I said went. And when they saw me change my life and became a leader in something positive like the game of chess, man, there's countless people who wrote me letters, DeVaughn, after they gotten out and told me, man, you were like a dad to me. What can I do to help you? Can I send you some money? You know, and I was like, no, the only thing I would write back and I'm saying, no, the only thing I want you to do for me is to stay free.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's because just like you said, game of chess touched my life. I was able to touch other people's life and it had that ripple effect.
Wonderful, wonderful, and so that perfectly segues into my next question for you, Tony. The topic being, legacy, right? And so now, you have shown all of these positive transformations. People have looked to you and thank you for their own transformations and give you their own testimonies, right? And so, can you tell us more? Tell the audience more about your new book, Time Alone: From Isolation to Transformation. Once again, congratulations on publishing that. Wonderful accomplishment, wonderful milestone. And if you could just speak more about your book and give an audience just a little taste of what that's all about.
Yeah, so also I started my own nonprofit organization called Masters and Mentors Youth Enrichment Strategies, and I talk about that in the book. But Time Alone, from isolation to transformation, this book here is about my life, man. It's about the traumatic issues that happened in my life that sparked the person that I became, and then it delves off into my childhood trauma, different problems of my environment where I grew up, and how that shaped my thinking. And then it goes off into where I encountered the game of chess and how chess became a way to reshape my thinking. And so it went from my childhood trauma and problems and things that I went through that really, affected me psychologically and emotionally and mentally, and then resulted in impulsive behavior that wind up in my incarceration, which is the title Time Alone, where I began to develop my thinking skills and change because of the game of chess and how it elevated me to where I am today. And so, yeah, Time Alone, it talks about that time alone that I spent in segregation, the time alone throughout my lifetime where I felt alone, and how chess became a catalyst for that change.
Wonderful.
And it can be found anywhere, man, on anywhere where books are sold, Barnes and Nobles, Amazon.com, Time Alone: From Isolation to Transformation.
Thank you. Thank you. And once again, audience, we will, I'll try to get a link in the description as well for those who want to get an online copy or, find where to hammer down that book. But once again, on all platforms, Time Alone: From Isolation to Transformation from Tony Ballard. Please go purchase that copy. Check it out. I believe it'll be a very powerful and transformative book for anyone who picks it up. And
the goal.
Yeah.
So the goal of the book is just completely transparency, because everybody's been through something in life, and I felt like if I could just lay my life bare and let people know that, hey, we go through things, we go through struggles, we go through adversities, but it's not to come out of it bitter, but to come out of it better. And so that's what I highlight the most in here, is how every situation that I encounter, every adversity or problem, I overcame, and it developed character within me. So that's what I hope people will get out of this book.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Thank you again. Well, Tony, I just got to give you another personal round of applause.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
I commend you for all your efforts, and I wish you absolutely the best in every endeavor. And to whatever capacity myself and US Chess can continue to support you, we will definitely continue to do that, because, it's more than just a game. This is transformative and impactful for so many people. And so I just want to thank you for being part of our part of the podcast here, and that's our interview segment.
Yeah, DeVaughn, let me get in this. So part of my nonprofit organization, Masters and Mentors Youth Enrichment Strategies, it's two components to this program. One is the game of chess, where we teach kids the game of chess, where they fall in love with the game, but they're developing life skills at the same time, learning how to think, removing them away from impulsivity to a habit of thinking about their consequences. And so the other component is that I'm trying to build and purchase a curriculum. It's a cognitive behavior intervention curriculum. It's a curriculum that I used while I was incarcerated, and it's evidence-based. And you can find that through University of Cincinnati Correctional Institute, But on our website at www.mastersandmentors.org, you can find where we're looking to ask for support with our curriculum, purchasing that curriculum.
Wonderful. Thank you, because that was my next point. I was going to say, where else can people support your new nonprofit? And so thank you for the directing that. And we'll also add a link to that within the description as well, just so people have easier access to it.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Tony, would you like to transition into our next segment?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, sounds good. And so, audience, this would not be a chess podcast, in my opinion, without sprinkling in some chess. And so what we normally do is we have our interview segment at the beginning, and then at our second half, we go over a notable chess game that has been selected by our special guest, and just to, talk about how chess has been impactful for them outside the board. And now we're going to look inside the board and see some of the moves that they decide to make and get in the mind of the player, for lack of better words. And so we're going to jump into a game here. And Tony, you should have access to make the moves. And if you could just give context about what this game was, who you were playing against, what was the situation, and then I'll let you, take it from there.
Yeah, so this game is against my friend James Lay. He is the executive producer of a documentary that he had done with me. He followed me for about a year, covering everything that I've been doing in the Kansas Department of Corrections, as well as globally, with using chess as a cognitive rehabilitation tool for those that are incarcerated nationwide and internationally. And so from time to time, we get together, we play a game of chess. And so he introduced me to this platform, Lee Chess. And on this platform, we were playing this game here, and I opened up with D4, which is I felt was going to be my London system. I've been practicing the London system, and so that's what I start with. I came out with my London system with D4, and then he did G6. Mm-hmm. I thought it might have. I wasn't too concerned with it, so after that, I went ahead with my regular setup, and I ended up with this position right here. And so after his knight F6, I went ahead and continued with my development. And just like in the London system, after his knight C6, I wanted to protect that bishop on D3. Mm-hmm. And so I moved that C3 pawn up to stop him from coming there, and that's when he castled. Mm-hmm. Once he castled, man, DeVaughn, I'm thinking, okay, I need to, give him a pawn storm over here. Yeah. And just start pushing my pawn up on him, like getting to him really quickly. Mm-hmm. And that's when he tried to go ahead and shoot that middle pawn up and bust up this position I had where I actually ignored that, and I went bishop G5. Mm-hmm. And so pinning his knight, his queen got unpinned there. I took, he took, and then I went ahead and continued with my pawn storm, which is H5. Yep. So if I back that up, excuse me, let me back up to here.
Yeah, you should better use the arrows. There you go. Yep.
So, yeah, there we go. Here, I pinned him. Mm-hmm. Hold on. I feel like I'm going backwards.
Yeah, the forward arrow should be just fine.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. He got unpinned. I went ahead and he took me back. And I went ahead and jumped my knight out here so I can get some more pressure going over there on that kingside castle. Mm-hmm. I went ahead and took back. I couldn't take because he's pinned. He took the knight or the bishop. I went ahead and continued with that pawn storm over here. I wasn't worried about him taking that pawn on B2 and then eventually taking my rook. So I went ahead and took that pawn, and he did take back. And again, it's still just sitting there for him to take if he wanted. So I took with my my bishop that G6 pawn, mm-hmm. hoping that he'd take. Then I could come up with my queen on B3 and call check and get my bishop right back with a mate threat in corner at H8, yes, right? Yes. But he didn't fall for that. He just moved up. And so I went ahead and moved my bishop back to protect it from getting taken. and that's when he brought in his queen to double up on that bishop or rook in the corner, queen bishop double up. I wasn't sweating that so much. I went ahead and checked him, and that's when he jumped back. And then I forked his knight or his queen and his bishop right here. And of course, he's going to check me, and I had to move out of the way. And that's when I came in for the kill right here. He even has to move back. I moved my knight right here, opening up that C file for my rook to come down, because if that rook came down, now I got two rooks on that
On the seventh rank.
seven. Yeah. He moved his bishop up. I went ahead and did that because if he take, I'm just going to check him, which would, probably be a problem for him. And at that point, he resigned.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Dang. Beautiful game, by the way.
Yeah.
Beautiful game. The London system, very reliable opening, by the way. So, wonderful choice there. I think what was so poetic about this game, and it's short and sweet, but the theme that I kept getting after every move that you were making is, I have a goal, I have a mission, I'm going to stick to it no matter what all these outside distractions are, right?
Yeah.
Kind of poetic, very symbolic to, the things that we talked about earlier, during your incarceration. So I just felt like this game was just so perfect for this situation. So thank you for sharing this.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for allowing me to share and be a part, man. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. And then, so any last things that you want to mention again to our audience, Tony? Once again, thank you for joining. Any final words or things that you want to say as you're signing off?
Yeah, so the last thing I like to share, man, is that because I spent 26 years of my life incarcerated. I'm free now. I'm out here in society. And while I was there, I was working with the Gift of Chess. I was on salary and I was getting paid to do what I do, love to do. Unfortunately, a lot of the things that I was doing with the Gift of Chess, I'm not able to do anymore because I have to work a 9 to 5. And just because the Gift of Chess is a nonprofit and we didn't receive the funding that can help us support the mission, as far as the prison outreach mission, I no longer work as under official capacity as the prison outreach director, but I do volunteer and help where I can. But working a 9 to 5, making sure I pay my bills, transition into society, that's the main thing right now. It's not my first love. I'm a barber instructor at the barber school. It's not my first love. My first love is chess. And if I could go back to being a paid, director of the prison outreach here to get the chess, then that's what I love to do. But unfortunately, a lot of the things that we were doing in the prison system is not supported funding wise. And so I have to, just give my volunteer time where I can. So unfortunately, yeah, there's no more official, day-to-day operations with the prison outreach.
So for those in our audience who are looking to support you, who either have, opportunities, ideas, or would love to partner with you in any way, what ways can they reach out to you and contact you?
Yeah, they can reach out to me on Facebook. They can reach out to me on Instagram. On Instagram, I'm Tony Ballard 1977. On Facebook, it's Tony Ballard. They can also go to Masters Mentors website, www.mastersandmentors.org. And those are a couple places that they can support us right there.
Wonderful. Okay.
Also they can email me at Tony Ballard at mastersandmentors.org.
Okay. Great. Thank you for sharing those. I wanted you to just verbally say them, and we're going to collect all that information and have that also in the description as well. So anyone who comes across this video and engages with this podcast will have some opportunities to reach out to you and contact you. And once again, I just have to give you a final thank you, Tony, and wish you the best in all of your endeavors. And like I said, look forward to partnering with you and supporting you in whatever way we can.
Well, thank you, DeVaughn. I appreciate it. And I will be looking forward to that partnership and making some things happen in a positive manner here in the city of Wichita and Kansas, period.